Hello, happy World Book Day. Well, I'm hoping it's World Book Day. If I get this edited and done in time, then it will be still World Book Day and I'll still be on time. But if not, then it's World Book Day Boxing Day or something. I've just been on BBC Local Radio, which is brilliant, talking about how schools need to get more BAME characters in their school library so that children have, like, not just so they have costumes for World Book Day, just so they can see people who they identify with in stories. And the brilliant Rochelle Humes has just shared a tweet about us to all of her nearly 1 million followers on Twitter. So I'm hoping that more people are finding out about what we're doing and will support us to get these books into as many schools and families as possible. You might have seen that I did a little post about the books that had impacted me earlier, either today or yesterday. And I did that because I realised what a privilege it is to work in books and to have had access to them for my whole life. Like, I've been encouraged to read since I was really little, and I was surrounded by people who read, and the importance of it was never lost on me. And that is a privilege, and I know that not everybody has that good fortune. And sometimes, I forget of the brilliant job that I'm involved in. I'm working with people who, encouraging people to read, and that's like my dream job. And sometimes I don't take time to reflect and take stock and think about what a great privilege that is as well. So I wanted to look at the 10 books that have had an impact on me, just as a celebration of what reading can do for someone. When you can identify with characters, or when you enjoy a story, it has a huge impact and you remember it for your whole life. So I'm just going to quickly run through. I might get through all 10, I might not, I might leave some of them out, but quickly run through some of the books that have had a massive impact on me over the years, and just a little bit about why I chose them. I can't not start with the read it yourself version of Heidi. I had this when I was 4, and I picked up another copy the other day on eBay because I saw it and I was just like, have to have it. I lost it. We moved from Newcastle to Northumberland when I was really little, and we lost it somewhere in the move. And I remember asking my mum over and over again, where is my Heidi book? I really want it. And I just loved it. And I think it's because it was the first book that I could read myself. And, losing it was a real tragedy. But when I opened it the other day, even remembering like the peacock on the inside just made me, get all those nostalgic feelings again. So, it's an absolute favourite. I'm looking for the other one that gives me all the nostalgic feelings, and I've buried it underneath a mountain of books here. If teenage girls who are watching this, or people who were teenagers, I don't know, 80s, 90s, don't get like all the feelings when they see this book, I don't know where you've been, because this one was just like one of the most important books. And Judy Blume is my all-time hero. She was such a trailblazer, speaking about things that nobody spoke about, just to be a companion to teenage girls as they were growing up. Well, teenagers everywhere. I mean, it's just essential reading. She taught me about things I'd never considered about. She talks about adolescence, and she talks about sex and growing up, and just all the things that teenage girls need to know about. And she did it so beautifully and in such a gripping way that this still today makes me get all the shivers just remembering how important this book was when I was little. So I've got a few others, not totally random choices. I've got Purple Hibiscus here, but anything by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has had a huge impact on me, especially her book Americana, which I've lent to someone, I can't remember who, but it's not here. That's been the most incredible, powerful book of hers for me, where just the way she explains things, her storytelling makes you realise much more about race relations, and how much, being white, I'm not impacted by so much of what people of colour have to go through on a daily basis. She just explains things so beautifully and in such an accessible way. And if you've ever seen a TED talk about the danger of a single story, that is something that really inspires my work even now. Just hearing her talk about the danger of representing people in a certain way over and over again, and not accessing that richness of storytelling that's available about so many different people. So if you can find anything by her, she's got loads of stuff on YouTube, I would. She's incredible. I cannot not talk about this, because Andre Agassi, he was like my hero from, I don't know, I must have been 11, 12 or something, but I played loads of tennis, and he was a natural person for me to just love. And I was absolutely convinced I was going to marry him, even though he was that 1 inch shorter than me. But this book just gave me access to his world that I'd never had before. I mean, it was just such a I was so excited to read it, and I just, you know, like I could remember all the bits of his career where I just so obsessively watched him, and then seeing the story behind it and finding out some devastating things about like what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, I just loved it as a book on its own, and I know that other people that I know have read it who weren't as obsessed with me and just loved it. That had a huge impact on me. I just this is a bit of a different story. I don't think I would have ever read this one, and I can remember it being quite a labour of love for me to read it. I was an aid worker for a while, and I went to Haiti after the 2010 earthquake and was reporting back for the media about what was going on there, talking to survivors, like, you know, finding stories to send back home. And we would take pictures and meet survivors, and I always travelled with the same photographer, who was Richard Hanson, who was the most incredible man. We did a photo exhibition later when we got back, and this was one of his favourite books because of his own love story, and just for the most beautiful reasons, and he encouraged me to read it. And it is like a literary detective novel, and it felt dense at the time, but I just loved that he'd recommend it from such a pure, beautiful place. And he died a few years ago of leukemia, so he's not there to share all my stories, all the stories of discovering chicken in a tube in Pakistan, and him protecting me from quite tricky situations in Pakistan where the women are supposed to be silent, and I always struggled with that. And just laughing a lot as we travelled, because you wait a long time in these places, playing a lot of Scrabble. And I'm gutted that he's not with us anymore. I miss him all the time, but I just love that I've got this book left over from him as a bit of a legacy that, you know, that he left me. What else have we got? I think Roxanne Key, like, she writes beautifully and accessibly and in the most intimate way. She reveals things about her past in a way that gives us a lesson about the wider world. She writes really honestly and brutally and gives a lot of herself in everything she writes. And it has just been I just love the idea of being a bad feminist, and she does, and she explores that idea and talks about sexual violence and just how everything all fits together, and how we all contribute to the power of the patriarchy, and how to combat that. She's just brilliant, and there's loads of stuff about her online, and you can find anything, you can find all of her work there. Northeastern hero, she's from near me, and she was a war reporter and inspired me to study journalism at Sheffield Uni. It didn't make me be a war reporter. I don't think like working on Big Brother as your first job is gonna make that happen. But she still, she inspired me all the time. You can imagine she was like being beamed into our living rooms, and she was from nearby. She's quite the incredible woman, and I love her stories about like her work as a war reporter. This one, like I said, I was an aid worker, and the first place I ever went to was Democratic Republic of Congo, and we were working with women who were survivors of sexual violence and doing water projects, or bringing clean water to villages. And we were, of course, right next door to Rwanda. Now, the only thing I knew about Rwanda was the genocide in '94, those horrific headlines where millions of people were killed by neighbours, by friends, like the whole society crumbled as all this viciousness and violence happened. And so I went to Rwanda, not, knowing about it, but, never having seen it close hand. And this book just really helped to explain some of what was going on, some of the build up towards it, and just some of the human stories. And, working there and seeing people working towards peace with this as a backdrop is the most powerful thing. You can't understand it if you weren't there, but, like this really helped to kind of help me to work in that environment, knowing some of what had happened. An incredible book, and really one that when I was reading while I was there was really intense. I just mentioned I worked on the first series of Big Brother, and this came out around the same time when everybody wanted to be famous, and I just loved it. I mean, it's quite like bloggy, that humour from that time, but it was very funny about somebody accidentally getting really famous. And that's it. I loved looking back through my books, and I'd really love it if you could. I'd love to see what your favourite books, what are the ones that have impacted you. Send me a DM, put it up on social media, tag us in. I'd love to see it.